Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Profit Minds podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stephen Kirch, creator of the Profit Minds Growth System, a unique blend of profit growth, productivity acceleration, and building robust business process for scale. In every episode, I interview entrepreneurs and small business owners from around the world with a unique story to tell. You can find the show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple and Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and more. Well, hi, everyone. Today, my guest is Dan Tocchini. He's CEO and co-founder of Take New Ground and a transformationalist. Today, we're going to be talking about how to change leadership into leadership. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, as we talked, and as all of my listeners know, the first question they ask, or the first thing that I ask my guests to do, is to tell their story. How did you get to be a transformationalist?
All right. It's a good question, but I blame my mother.
My mom's responsible for a lot of who I am too. So
my mother was a schizophrenic, manic depressive, and she had a serious breakdown when I was about 12, after my youngest brother was born. And I don't know if you've ever seen anybody disassociate, but it's a scary thing. But it intrigued me because I thought she was trying to communicate. It's just the way she was doing it was weird and odd. And I persisted in working to understand her symbolism and became the go-between between her and the psychiatrist after about a year of my dad trying all kinds of bringing in psychiatrists from all over the world. And they were talking about giving her a lobotomy because she'd come out of a catatonia and hurt herself and be violent. And I talked them into letting me see if I could communicate with her. And I started reading really young because I wanted to see how to communicate with her. And I think the first book I ever read was Gestalt Therapy verbatim. And I started reading like at 12 or 13.
Something light. Yeah.
Nothing like. And then I started reading all the neuro-linguistic programming stuff that was coming out. It was really early in that time. And I was young. And I picked up on modeling and really was able to connect with her. And so my whole work around how to transform things, like how do you have something, no matter what it is, work for you, even if it's not what you want? Like, how do you engage what is to bring what isn't into being? And so it started back then. And, I went through a pretty rough childhood, left home at 16, got involved with drugs. And, I played ball, kind of went sideways in college. And at about 23, 24, I started coming around. And my wife, who I had married, the gal I married, discovered I was living a double life. I was dealing drugs, and we had a 1-year-old at the time. And she said, "Look, I can't stay with you now. I know what you're doing. We got another life to consider. You can't be doing this." And I agreed, but I felt helpless. What could I do? And I've always been a voracious reader, and I got very much involved in the human potential movement. Went back to school, did some study around phenomenology, linguistics, neuroscience, and just, my own recovery was a lesson in itself. And it's been 40 something years, and I'm 68 now. So, and I've had the privilege of working with some of the best companies in the world. But that's how it started for me. And for me, it was really, how do you order this chaos? How do I bring order to this chaos called my life and release something beautiful into life? Especially when you have kids, that's a concern, obviously.
Yeah. And that obviously changes everything. And so it sounds like you've struggled through a number of things personally, and been able to translate those into business struggles.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about how your individual struggle plays in the team dynamic, because I know you work a lot with teams.
I do a lot of work with teams. Yeah.
How does the one translate into the other?
Well, Where the point is, most people they like to silo their lives as if I'm different at work than I am at home, but I'm not. I'm actually have the same system of interpretation. The same worldview goes with me both places. And if you actually get invested in your work like you are at home, you'll begin to manifest the same things that work and don't work at home at work. The more invested you are at work, the more it means to you, the more at stake you are for the results, the more it's going to bring to surface the things that you use to protect yourself when you think you're going to lose something you value. And unless you can maintain it. So I think a lot about, I used to box. And if you're going to box a well, you have to remain calm. You have to govern yourself. And there are three basic things we focus on. The first one, self-mastery. What is it that you are thinking and feeling, and like, how are you managing your state, and how does that impact your team? So the better I can manage myself, the more impactful I'm going to be in leading others, and that's going to produce breakthrough results. So we work in that. So first, we want to work with the executives that we work with to get a hold of themselves, to manage themselves, to know themselves well. So when somebody they come across starts to touch their buttons, rather than react, they can use their reactions as allies, guiding them, telling them what might be missing for them to be aware of, maybe look into, ask questions about, rather than react and, do something that they're going to spend days, weeks, months, years correcting because they didn't think about it first.
That self-mastery is critical.
Yeah.
So that's the first aspect. What's the second one?
Then leading others, knowing, like, managing your impact, understanding how my presence impacts others. Do I pay attention to my audience? There are three basic things I can go into, but one of them is rhetoric, which is in the classical sense, is to understand your audience, understand who you're talking to, understand what their interests are. And if you think about a business owner, how often, and I know I've worked with a lot, small and large, how often do I actually think and understand how the mission of the organization benefits the individuals that are participating? If they give themselves, how does it benefit them? And if I'm not clear about that, I'm probably going to be out of touch with the impact it has or how to correct it when things don't work with them. Yeah. So I won't be able to track back to what the trigger was that caused them to go off or misalign or seemingly undermine the mission. And it's usually attached to something they think is better for them than the mission. So,
yeah, really insightful. And the third aspect,
breakthrough results. What's it take to produce breakthrough results? What is the standard I'm holding people to? And do I manage them to the standard, or do I try to manage them with my personality? Do I have the kind of relationship with them that they get that I'm committed to their well-being, to their excellence, to their professional development, and that what they're going to do here in our work is going to benefit them everywhere they go, because it's developing them as people as well as making them a professional, that's effective at the office.
Okay. So let's back up now to the self-mastery piece, because I really like that. And it fits very well with, I've been a certified facilitator of the 7 habits for 25 years, right? And Covey said, between the action and the response, there's a pause, right?
That's right.
That pause is the pause of self-mastery.
Right on.
Right.
Yeah,
you can't just react.
I love the whole idea of listening empathically, which he talks about.
Mm-hmm.
And, most people don't really even understand empathy. It's not like you sympathize, you don't have to agree, but I understand how you see the world based on your interests, based on what motivates you. And then I can see the world from your perspective. You're going to be much more open to what I have to contribute than if I wasn't plugged into that.
Yeah, and that fits very nicely into the whole leadership thing, right? You can't lead if you don't know, as you said, what it is that motivates, or why it is that what is it that everybody else is going to get out of this, right? It can't just be about, well, we're going to build a better company. That better company helps me as the CEO or me as the leader, but how does it help you?
And what does better mean to you? What I mean, better to you might mean something different than me. Can we align those things? And that's, we do a lot of work with that because we have found that to be vital to creating a team that's basically willing to learn and wants to take action because they get directly how it's going to impact them. And so we spend a lot of time understanding why are you on this executive team? When we accomplish the mission, how does that benefit you? And how do you integrate? And one of the big concerns that comes up with all executive teams is the integration of personal and professional life. It's usually referred to as work-life balance, but we say, no, man, no. You want to integrate them. So like when I need time from home, they're up for it and they get it's contributing to them. And then when I need time at work, you get it's a benefit for me to go take care of my family because it benefits work. And we're clear about how that works and being able to integrate it. It's crucial, man.
Yes, it really is. And I love that there are an awful lot of people talking now about not work-life balance, but as you say, work-life integration. I think there are some other words for it as well, but it's really understanding that tension that exists naturally,
right?
But it's, what was it, the cartoon where, work-life balance? Well, if you're going to work-life balance, then it's 168-hour work week. That means 81 hours at work and 81 hours at home. That's balance.
Yeah. And you end up juxtaposing them. You end up pitting them against each other, which is
and that doesn't help anybody.
No. It creates the adversarial environment, which often gets created between work and home.
Right. So, and one of the things that we discovered during the pandemic, and I think one of the blessings of the pandemic, was that people recognized that there were things more important to them than being at the office or being at work or even working. And that's, I think, a part of what led to the great resignation was people said, I don't need this.
Yeah, I could do it. I can actually live without this. I can make it without this. Yeah.
Right. But once you find an employer or a position or a career that honors what you're trying to do outside of the career itself, that can be a very meaningful relationship, and you'll give much more to it.
Oh, absolutely. People, it's amazing. People enjoy coming to work and look forward to, what they learn there is going to benefit them out in their family life and in their social life. If that's occurring, the synergy is phenomenal. People will do things you would never ask them because you'd think it's too much. They'll go do the extra mile.
And you couldn't pay them enough to do it in dollars.
That's right. Absolutely.
But if you honor who they are as a person, then they'll give you their all.
But and it's interesting. When we talk like this, it's inevitable that the CEO at some point or an executive will say, well, I didn't come here to babysit them, as if, I always say, well, what's when that comes up, I always ask, tell me the purpose of that. Why did you say that? When I talk about honoring somebody, understanding why they're here, what their why is, their personal why is, how that lines up with your mission. How is it that babysitting occurred to you? I mean, what was the purpose of that? And inevitably, it stumps them because people don't often think about why they say something. And I would suggest, I say to them, well, is it because you are afraid that they're going to take advantage of you? Is it because you're uncertain about how to have this conversation? Is it because you don't really care about that conversation and they're a tool and they ought to just get up to their toolness? Like, what's going on in your background of your mind? Because that aim is going to infiltrate everything you do. No matter what face you put on it, they will sniff the insincerity out, and they will inevitably let you know, either through their words or performance, that they get you're inauthentic with them. So you might as well get clear about it now, because you may not even be aware of it. And that's part of the managing self conversation is, are you aware of your own meta conversation and how it's influencing your conversations with everybody you're working with, both at home and on the team. So.
Yeah, that's really interesting. One of the things that I do in some aspects of my coaching is I ask, it's actually early on in my relationship with the CEO, is where do you want to be in 3 years?
Right on.
Not the company, not because usually what they answer is, well, I want my company to be this and I want the revenue to be that. No. I'm not talking about the company. I'm talking about you as an individual. And then when I start working with the executive team, I want to make sure, just as you do, that the executive team, they all know where they want to be in 3 years.
Yeah. Like, who do they want to become as they're here? Like, who will you be in 3 years? What, not just what you'll be doing, but what will be happening around you that isn't happening now? What external results? What kind of relationship will you have with the team, with the board, with investors, with the clients? Like who
with your family,
and how will they be integrated? How like what will happen as you work here? That's a great question. I love it. I wrote it down here. If you don't.
No, that's great. It's because if where the company is headed takes you away from where you want to head, then you won't put everything into it.
You're going to resist it.
Yeah, you'll fight against it. Even if it's subconscious, you'll fight against it.
And we have an ongoing conversation, both with our consultants who are partners at different levels and with the founders. If at any moment you feel like there's something you'd rather do other than this, if you feel like this is not working for you, please come talk to us. We will support you in moving on. And we've had one of my partners is a guy named Chad Brown. He runs our podcast, the Naked Leadership Podcast. He runs all the communications for the company. And he's probably come and go 3 times. And the last one, he stuck really hard. But my point to him was, he said, look, I got to go try this. So go do it, man. We're with you. And so it was no shame when he came back. Was no shame when he left. No shame when he came back. And now he's been with us for 3.5 years. And he's made a huge mark on our team, done a great job with us. And it's just because I believe a lot of that's just the context of being open-handed with people, knowing that, hey, we know that if you're not well here, we're not well here. So how can we support you? Nothing. Get it on the table. Let's see how we can work it out. If you're willing to maintain your responsibilities here, hand them off, finish well, we're here to support you moving on. So
that's really great. I do a lot of work with the Rockefeller habits, scaling up, Vern Harnish's right. And number one habit is that the executive team is healthy and aligned.
Right.
That's exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly. And because that's where the mischief starts and then it rolls out from there.
Mm-hmm. And it's also interesting, when I was at Intel, and my last position there, I had a team of about 40, and I'd been brought in because the team was disintegrating. A very long time manager of that team had left. Yeah. And the person who took over for that, it didn't manage the team properly. And so the important members of the team were starting to leave. And so one of the things that I said to the whole team, I said, look, I want you to come to work excited every day about what you get to do.
Yeah.
So if you're not excited, come talk to me and I'll find you a project that does excite you. And if I can't find you a project that does excite you within the context of my team, I'll help you find another job.
Right
on. And it was exactly that. Right?
Yeah.
Because I also knew that if they were really excited about what they were working on, they were going to think about it 24/7.
You know it. They're going to mull it over. I do that with my clients. I love my clients. And if they're going through trouble, I'll be up at night thinking about how. There was one particular client that I just recently went through some changes and left one company to another. And his struggle running the company he left kept me up for, I remember having multiple 2-hour conversations with him late at night that he either called me or I'd call him because something came up as he navigated it. But if I'm not that connected to the client, I really don't want to work with them. If I'm not at stake with them, like they're my team, it's a problem. And I won't take clients if I don't get I can work with them. because it's just a waste of time and money for them and for us.
So going back to this, the thing with the CEO and the why was it he said he didn't want to be a babysitter? That whole mindset.
Yeah.
What's the best time to bring up? So if he recognizes that or she recognizes they have that problem, what's the best time to bring that up and to be honest with the employees about what's going on in their own head? How do you navigate that?
That's how is probably not, it's more of a who, like, who are you going to be when you talk about this? Like, why are you talking to them about it first? What do you want to cause with them? What experience, what kind of as you go forward, what relationship, like kind of your question of who do you want to become together, right? That deal. And get that really clear. And then, because a lot of times people don't talk about these things because they don't have the language for it. And so if you can help, I know I found that if I can, one of the things I talk to CEOs or, founders and executives about, I ask them to imagine their feelings as thoughts trapped in the body looking for language. And so when you have a thought and you have a feeling, you need to talk to somebody, you got to get language on it. How can I say it so they can hear it? How can we come together shoulder to shoulder, not, shoulder to shoulder, looking at the problem, not head to head,
not nose to nose. Yeah.
Yeah. Which can often happens because I don't have the right language, or I'm using language that triggers them because it doesn't fit for them. So how do I frame it? And the first thing I talk about is frame the issue and then give them an example. So if I said, Steve, really want to talk to you about this thing that went on with so-and-so, right? Or with you and so-and-so. And here's what was, I saw, I wondered, here's an example of it. And when I saw it, this is what happened for me. I don't know what happened for you or for her. And here's how I see, I contributed to it. I've seen it and I've said anything about it. I'm trying to find a way to open this up with you. I'm concerned if it continues about what the future could be. They have a whole set of things I'll work with them on. So when they go to talk about it, they have a good broad understanding of where they're at, possible responses, so they don't feel out of control, so they can relax and go into the conversation with some confidence. But most people don't generally prepare for a conversation. A lot of the executives I work with kind of just wing it without thinking about, what do I want to get done? Who am I talking to? Like, there's three things I think of. Rhetoric, who's the audience? Logic, what's their framework, or what's their structure of meaning? What do they value? How do they make meaning out of this? What's their thinking on it? And the third one is, what questions can I ask to help me understand what I'm not fully aware of? And what questions can I ask to bring them to the table so they can see what I'm wrestling with? And so I prepare in those three areas. And if you do a good preparation that way, you just tend to be more like, it's like a compass. You go in oriented in a way that's going to be much more resourceful than if you're just kind of feeling around the dark. Oh, there's a landmine. Oh my God, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that preparation, and what is it that you want to get out of the conversation? I mean, what's the goal of going down that path in the first place?
Why are we having this conversation? What do I want to accomplish? And if I tell somebody that, they tend to relax because they know what I'm doing there.
Right.
They know what my interest is, and they can investigate it with me, and I can investigate with them. But they understand why I'm having the conversation.
Right.
Too often, a lot of the conversations that are had are kind of ambiguous or nebulous or, a bit mystical, and it gets people a little nervous, especially if they're talking to somebody who's got the power of the pen, right? So, you want to be able to say why you're there.
Right. Well, yeah. And the other piece of it, which we talked about earlier, is if everybody already knows a priori that everybody's aimed at doing the same thing,
Yeah.
Everybody has the same ultimate goal in mind, and it's all aligned with where I want to be.
Yeah.
That also relaxes the conversation, because it is by its nature then not antagonistic,
Yeah.
but it's all intended to make this a better situation for everybody, not just for me as the boss.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because in neuroscience, when you aim at something, let's say we're sitting 6 people and we're all aiming at the same thing we've agreed to, our neurological system, our brain, our nervous system starts to create hierarchies of concern that line up with the aim. So if we're truly aimed at the same thing, we're going to be in sync or aligned. It's when the aim, and in fact, next week I'm going to meet with an executive team, actually 2 founders, and their company's grown tremendously. We've been with them for 6 years. We took them from 500,000 a year in ARR to a little over 8 million this year, and they're going to do 10 next year. But it's clear that one of the founders may be looking at wanting to keep this a lifestyle business, when he's agreed with the other founder to really take it, scale it, and sell it, or at least bring it to the public level. And that's shifted, and the one partner can see it. The other partner is nervous about it. And I said, look, why don't we get together and just sit down and talk about what's not being talked about? And they both were excited about that, because they know that if they continue, it's like one of the things I like to draw out is the parade of horribles. If I continue in this state, what future is attached to it? And the more we can illuminate that, then the quicker people are willing, the more motivated they are to move. Humans are 5 times more motivated to prevent something horrible from happening than from having something wonderful happen. So if I can see what horrible thing is coming based on what I've already chosen, I'll be much more motivated to shift. Right?
Yeah.
So
that's a great way to use that predisposition of our brain.
Yeah, our biology. Right on.
Yeah. Cool. So I understand you have a free gift for the listeners. Want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's called The Change Imperative. I wrote it years ago. I was consulting with ESPN when they had been bought. They had merged with Disney, and there was a lot of change going on. And I wrote this pamphlet to help some of the leadership to anticipate what they can expect during the change and how to plan for it, and that things have to get worse before it gets better, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And so The Change Imperative's a ebook, about 90-something pages, very clear about what to expect in change and ways to prepare for it.
Okay. And how should people go about getting that?
I believe you guys have the link, but if you don't, you can go to our website, which is takenewground.com. And it's on if you just scroll down, you'll see there's a promo for it. Just click it and you can download it.
And what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Well, LinkedIn, Instagram, our website, and our podcast, which is takenewground.com. Or no, it's called the Naked Leadership Podcast, and it's on both Spotify and Apple. So
great. Yeah. And that concludes our show. Thanks to my guest, Dan Tocchini, CEO and founder of Take New Ground and a transformationalist. I hope you learned something about changing leadership into leadership. I know I did. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Steve.
You've been listening to the Profit Minds podcast. This is your host, Dr. Stephen Kirch. Please visit www.profitminds.net for other episodes or to contact me. Thank you for your positive feedback, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others. Thanks for listening. Have a grateful day.